Started. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Dave. I'm VP of Guides here at LifeGuides, and we have a wonderful presentation for you today, a wonderful conversation with 4 of our guides. This is a little unusual from what we usually do. Typically, we have more structured and streamlined conversations on specific topics, but today I really wanted to show you the magic that our guides bring from their level of experience. We want to have a conversation and learn from each other as we always do. So as I stated before, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A. We'll get to them as soon as we can. Just a quick background on me. I've been with LifeGuides since the end of 2020, and it's been a wonderful journey supporting the Guides community and helping them to grow. I want to introduce our wonderful panel today. As I stated before, we have a little bit of a different format today, so we have 4. I'm going to start with Dane. Dane comes to us with a plethora of experience when it comes to life management, coaching, and decades-long career that she's had in education, as well as a mentor and coach. She hails and supports the Home Life and Healthy Family Relationships channel. So we want to welcome you, Dane. This is her first time. Thanks for being here. Next, who I want to introduce is Lindsay. Lindsay is a holistic coach and a marketing professional in the health tech space, and she understands the demands of balancing work, family, and self-care. We're going to be talking a lot about that, so definitely want to appreciate and show some love to Lindsay for being here. This is also her first time, so welcome, Lindsay. She's a part of our Work Life and Leadership channel. And next is Scott. Always love seeing Scott. I see him all around. For those who don't know, Scott and I are a part of a few groups together. So we spend some time just growing, learning, and helping to build strong leaders. Scott is actually a leadership coach, a servant leader and a father, and he loves helping create environments where people can thrive, grow, and maintain healthy relationships. So welcome, Scott. Appreciate you being here. All right, and last, but this is also his second time, shout out to Richard. Welcome. We've done this before. We had a wonderful time when we did it before, I think with Leslie. Please go back and check the archives if you haven't seen that. So Richard, by trade, is a classically trained chef and a cookbook author who lets the seasons guide him to a global taste experience. I love the way you worded that. And so for everyone, please give a warm welcome to Richard. This is his second run here at Thrive Time. So that's our quick introductions of everyone. Thanks for everyone putting the hellos in the chat. Hi, Helen. Hi, Paula again. And I want to just throw out the first question to Dane. We're going to have this strong conversation really about understanding the intersection of work, life, maintaining balance, and building strong relationships. And we're also going to uncover how our guides are here to help you as members support you on your journey. So the first question to Dane, I invite you, you're already off mute, which is wonderful, to ask, what do you see as far as the steps that are needed to build a healthy and strong relationship? Like, what does that look like to you to build a healthy and strong family relationship? Because we know that that's important to everyone's lifestyle.
Well, I'm here, as you said, I'm here to talk about a home life and relationships. And so there are several subtopics that fall under there. And I can tell you that I personally have experienced every single one of them. I'm going to give you as an example. That would be divorce, breakup, marriage, remarriage, raising a family, raising a blended family, and single parenting. So, and family conflict, which is pretty high on the list right now. So as I looked through all of the subtopics, I got to thinking there has got to be something, a common thread. What is common that causes these issues that ultimately break down the family unit? So that brought me to the 3 C's of communication, compromise, and commitment. And the further along I got in there, it became very apparent that we cannot fix anything until we fix ourselves. So I started, I could not go through this without looking in the mirror myself and going, wow. This, I had a lot of wow moments. This is where I went wrong. This is where I need to work. So basically, to go after a roundabout way, go back to your question, I think the number one step for a healthy relationships would be that you do a self-assessment, and then you start to do the work. And number one on that list, to me, in my opinion, is we need to be able to talk to each other, to send a clear message, and more importantly, we need to hear each other.
Absolutely.
That's where I'm at right now.
So I want to go a little bit further. I know in your 3 C's, and don't worry, I'm going to post these 3 C's in the chat because they're gold, I believe. Your second one was compromise, as well as understanding how to build compromises when building relationships. So I want to take a quick pivot and actually ask Lindsay a question about how compromises have supported you in building healthy relationships. Because I noticed that you've had success, not only within your within your career trajectory in building balance. So I know that, of course, compromise is a part of balance. We have to kind of give and take. So what have you found to be successful for you in creating healthy compromise and balance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important now, especially these days when a lot of people are kind of working from home and your home life and work life are really kind of getting blurred into one. And it's sometimes hard to separate different things. And then also dealing with kind of relationships and everything else that people have going on outside of that. Everyone's so busy. Compromise is such a big deal. So I think definitely I like what Dane said about the self-assessment. I think a big piece of that is self-care. We want to make sure that we're kind of our best selves. So when we're doing our self-assessment, we kind of make sure we're the best version of ourselves and that we love ourselves. So I think putting kind of yourself above everything else is important. Definitely doing that, whatever that means to you. Self-care could mean different things to different people, but just kind of make sure you're taking care of yourself first. And then also just kind of, prioritizing things, making sure what's truly important. I think a lot of times work kind of seems to supersede other things just because everyone's asking you for things seem urgent and all that stuff. But I think just kind of taking a step back, making sure we're taking care of our mental and physical selves first is really important.
It's interesting that you say that, Lindsay, because I think we need to redefine the word selfish. Insofar as part of self-care is filling oneself up. And if we can kind of start looking at selfish as having the ability to know that our cup is filled, and with a filled up cup, I can now offer someone else a sip.
Yeah, I like that.
And so for me, there's a lot of reworking that whole concept of selfishness to make it more community based as opposed to destructive.
Yeah, I think the first thing in relationships too is you want to be good with yourself. So yeah, you might need a bit of that selfishness, not necessarily a negative thing. Take time to kind of be selfish, do the self-care, make sure you're your best self, and then go forward with, work, community, and relationships and all the other different things you need to do. That makes sense.
If I might, this conversation is kind of moving into something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's around servant leadership. And one of the big tenets of servant leadership is, so servant leadership is serving others. It's being a leader, but also serving your employees and helping them to become the best versions of themselves. But one of the big tenets of servant leadership is you have to take care of yourself. You can't take care of others at the point that they need it and at the level that they need if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not at 100%, if your cup, as Richard said, is not full. So I agree with both. It's really important to take care of yourself. And that doesn't mean that you forget everybody else. It just means that there's a priority to take care of myself so that I can help other people. Right. So just wanted to throw that in.
Good add. Dane, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I was reading, doing some reading by Esther Pearl, who talks about healthy relationships. And she ran an idea out there that just like you have a work resume and that highlights all your accomplishments, education, etc., that we sit down and we do a relational resume. And you ask yourself questions such as, what kind of, was I raised in an open environment or a closed environment? And there are, I'm happy to put the link out there so everybody can read it, but it was very eye-opening to me that you go through it. That's part of self-care. That's part of assessing who you are, where you are, how did you get to where you are? So much of who we are today, whether we realize it or not, was impacted by how we grew up, those experiences. So I thought that was really interesting to do a relational or relationship resume.
I like that. I've never heard that. But what I have heard is something similar. I think I've talked about it one time before. We're talking about cups. So the whole idea of if someone's cup, and I see on cue, Scott with the cup, if you have a cup that's covered, you know, and you're trying to pour into it, like pouring into someone else, it's just going to run off. You know, they're not going to catch it. And it's important that we are assessing how much we're pouring into others as well as pouring into ourselves. And if we have a cap on our cup, are we receiving, you know, the support that we need? So I want to take a slight pivot here and talk a little bit about, you talked about, you know, writing a relationship resume. I wonder, Dane, how can that pivot into a working relationship, which is a little bit different than maybe a personal relationship? You know, how can someone use that within their organization or even just within their working relationship, in your opinion?
Well, in my previous career, I recently retired with 45 years in education, and most of that time was spent working with at-risk families, students, and my colleagues. Because as a colleague, you struggle sometimes. So I can see this again, working from the standpoint, if you know who you are, and you are better able, I think, to present yourself to others. So what really, and again, I know I keep going back to that, but it really struck a chord with me that, you know, we've got to, each of us, do the work individually to bring our best to the group collectively.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Taught us
Dave.
to do that. Yes, Scott.
If I might, as Dane was talking, that it made me think of something. And I think it's important for folks to understand that, you know, in business, most organizations, the history has been, you're told when you come in, okay, you leave your problems at the door. You come into work, you're here to work, right? And leave your problems at the door. You can pick them up on your way out, but you don't bring them in. And so we've created this kind of bipolar individual, really, right? Because there's Scott at work, but there's then Scott at home. And the reality is that can't work. You can't function if I have to separate, because things that happen at home are going to affect me at work. Things that happen at work are going to affect me at home. So one of the things we need to look at is becoming a whole person all the time, right? So the relationship resume, I love that idea. I don't know that it wants to be separated from here's the work relationships and here's the family relationships or the personal relationships. I think it maybe should just be relationships, so that we don't continually add to this idea of this demarcation point to separate us out. So just wanted to throw that out.
No question. You actually strike a thought. I watched a show last night. Shout out to anybody who watches this ridiculous show called Rick and Morty, where they basically, it is ridiculous, but absurd at the same time, where they had night people do their meaningless work that they didn't want to do. Meaning they had, when they would fall asleep, the person at night would do crunches so that they could have, better abs. So that's what you're talking about, that kind of, I like that you mentioned the kind of bipolar, but from a therapist perspective, I would say more it's the bifurcation, like the using two different areas where we really need to work on as whole. And that goes back to balance. So, Lindsay, I think this is a good place where balance is important, and understanding that it's all whole, we're all one. So I wanted to get your thoughts real quick on, again, I know we keep going back to balance, but how can someone who is doing that, being bipolar, so to speak, and being two people, how can they bridge that gap, in your opinion?
Yeah, and I think now, especially that you're maybe at home working, at least a lot of people are doing a hybrid. So some days they might be at home and you're kind of maybe living with your family or spouse or roommates or whoever. It's kind of like they're there while you're working, and the lives are sort of blending together. So I think definitely kind of, yeah, it's being able to like bring your home and work life together, maybe a little easier in that sense now for the people that are kind of working remotely. But I think just kind of setting boundaries too is important for when you are kind of working, is like having sort of your work area and kind of going in there and thinking of that as like your office or your work life, and outside of that is kind of separate from that. But I think connecting with coworkers too is now a challenge for people, because like for me in my company, we do a lot of, online chats and Zooms and things like that, but everyone is remote and sort of all over the place. So I think kind of like finding new ways of connection is important. So just kind of finding ways to connect with people outside of just regular work talk, and kind of making relationships with people. And then it sort of seems like, you have kind of friends also included in your work day, and sort of have that like culture, that company culture that doesn't, that might come with more of an office, and what comes less from working from home. But yeah, I think the balancing it all is definitely always the challenge. I think it's difficult to kind of have all of these different moving pieces, and everyone is, busier than ever at this time. So I think just kind of, yeah, it's definitely difficult to manage it all, and everyone's struggling through that now.
No question. Go ahead, Richard.
Well, for me, the most important word there is balance and boundaries. So, and we all have different backstories that we're bringing to the fore. And, so part of, being the gadfly here, I don't know if I want to share everything that's going on right now in my life, because my backstory as someone who's dealing with someone with a chronic disease, and my caregiving, and I like coming to work and not, for me, it's the place I don't want to think about it. It's the place I can decompress. Work is a great escape for me, and a pleasurable escape. I have no problems revealing what's going on, and I ask for empathy, and I will give it in return. But I'm like, no, the boundary is we don't have to do anything but work, and that's okay too. Like the lack of intimacy does not mean the lack of caring, I guess is what I'm trying to express.
Okay. The lack of intimacy does not mean lack of care. So I'm immediately thinking about our work husbands or work wives. We have people who are always checking in on, trying to make sure that they're good so that they can perform well. And also as a side plug, that's why LifeGuides is a part of the service and offerings, is because some people can't carry that level of support for their work wives or husband because it's heavy. We're all dealing with heavy things on top of that. So I like that you're talking about, Richard, your experience. I want to volley a quick question to you about building kind of that happy place. Where you're talking about we're talking about balance. We're talking about knowing where to align people. Sometimes they may just be associates. Sometimes they may be work wives or husbands. Sometimes they may just, you may just have a cordial working relationship. Other times you may have a deeper relationship. So how do you find your happy place in that and build that, for yourself and others?
I'm a firm believer in an organic evolution. So it can never be forced. Your work spouse comes over time. It's not a match.com, assignment or a swipe or left or right. I have, it's been quite a while since I'm on the market, so you'll excuse my lack of knowledge. So it's not about that, that is based upon we have a shared workload. What can I do to make sure we fulfill project deadline? That's not there. For me, there's a lack of intimacy in that. You can't cut me down. You can disappoint me, but you can't break me emotionally. Right? Because it's a work environment.
Right.
And so I come to the work environment with that mindset first. The intimacy, the personal intimacy is like anyone I think, spend time with. It develops and it ripens. And you trust it more. And duration allows you, I think, to expose, for me at least, myself. My self-knowledge allows me to give myself immediately. So for me, there's a difference between giving myself immediately and exposing myself immediately. Right? So,
Nice.
and I appreciate the slower involvement than the immediate dive into the deep end.
That's important when building, allies too, I would add. You can't just force allyship. I mean, it's a process, it's an organic process, but it also requires intentionality. You have to be intentional with what you're doing, intentional with how you're communicating. You'd be surprised how much sometimes when you're attempting to build a safe space, especially for all the leaders and managers on the call or watching on the recording, you'd be surprised how tough it is to actually build those spaces where people can feel safe and be intentional. It takes time, and I like that you mentioned it takes an organic process. It's not something that is you could just structurally throw in and say, all right, everybody, kumbaya and dance together. That's not really how it works.
No, look, we're all individuals,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the only thing I ask us to bring is our individuality and our ability to be compassionate. Those are the things I require personally. Everything else is the added dressing to the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Your humor, your intellect, your ability to read a room, well, that's all further down. But if we can have at least our basic humanities, our basic sense that, yes, I see you as a person and you can see me back, because then that means you're showing me compassion. There's a place where we all can move from, be it in our private lives or in our professional lives.
Absolutely. And Lindsay, as a holistic health coach, one of the things that we've seen, just to peek everyone behind the curtain here at LifeGuides, is there's a push now for people looking for proactive health. They're looking for accountability partners, more wellness coaching, and more support with even nutrition challenges and how to keep that going. What's maybe one of the key ingredients that you've used in your coaching practice on building healthy practices for people?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think accountability is key for sure. And I think that's why a lot of people kind of look to others for that instead of just saying accountable to themselves. It's kind of the inner versus outer expectations thing, where if you just set an inner expectation, some people are good at meeting those, but some people need the outer expectation. So they need the other person to kind of hold them accountable to their goals. So I think accountability is definitely important. I think the kind of the holistic is sort of the key to it. So meaning it's every different piece of your life is healthy. So the whole basis of kind of my training is around integrative nutrition, which it means it's not just kind of food. It's like the nutrition of all different aspects of your life. So your home life, your career, your, food and exercise and all that, sleep, relationships, all the different kind of pieces of your life. And again, kind of going back to balance, just making sure those are kind of all on a good path and you feel kind of whole as a person. So I think definitely, I mean, for some people, routine is really important and kind of just making sure you're sort of staying on track, especially now that things are kind of all wacky these days with just people's schedules and working from home and all that kind of stuff. But accountability for sure is definitely important. And I know for myself, I am much more likely to stay on track with a goal if I have someone else kind of holding me accountable and just checking in with me and making sure. Otherwise, it's easy if you just have the inner expectations to say, oh, never mind, I'll just kind of push that off. I'm not really, letting anyone down but myself, and I'll just, do it later or, change my goal or whatever, and no one else will know. So I think kind of telling people about it and having others, join in with you is really an important piece.
I like the nutrition piece, and it made me think about maybe even asking Scott, like, what's the nutrition of a servant leader? Like, what is a servant leader feeding themselves, and how is a servant? So two questions: how is a servant leader feeding themselves, but also how is a servant leader supporting facilitation of mentoring for others, because they are being fed by being in a mentoree or mentorship relationship.
Sure. So 2 words: beer and chocolate.
Both awesome.
Yep.
No notes.
That's all you need. So to answer your question, I think that a servant leader is looking to provide a certain amount of nutrition, if you will, for those that he or she serves, right? So going back to that balance statement earlier, I'm going to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. And one of the things that, as Lindsay was going through her list of, the nutritional pieces, one thing for me that is critical on the servant leadership side, and this is just my opinion, is a spirituality piece, right? And so being able to have that nutritional intake of spirituality then allows you to move that to those that you're serving, and you don't have to do it from a standpoint of ramming it down their throat or anything. It's just your presence, the way that you come across would be a little bit different, and you're able to pick up on what those nutritional needs are of each of those folks that you serve. And from the mentoring piece, that mentoring, it would be for me another nutritional piece, right? And being able to offer your services from a mentoring perspective. So if I'm lucky enough to mentor somebody, then there's a stewardship that goes along with that as well. If I'm mentoring, I'm also taking care of this person, at a certain degree, to a certain level, but I want to make sure that they're getting the right information. I want to make sure that they have what they need to be successful in their particular role. And if I'm mentoring them and that nutritional piece is for them, then I'm taking care of both myself and them on a daily basis with the nutrition that I need. So did that answer your question?
Absolutely. You're breaking down kind of the time and the importance of the ingredients of building a relationship, which
Correct.
sometimes I think we look so forward to the outcomes, where someone's producing more or they're reaching high performance, that we forget about the ingredients, the small things that actually help spur that progress along. So
Correct.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful look at how we have to be more inclusive, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Inclusive in the things that we're bringing in, inclusive in the people that we're bringing in, so that we're adding the right ingredients, the right nutritional pieces to build a proper organization. I do want to ask everyone who's in the audience today, if there are any questions that you do have for any of our panelists, please put them into the Q&A. We'd love to answer them And again, we'll put in what topics each of our panelists are under. So if you are interested in connecting with them, you can further. I highly encourage it because as I'm learning some today, I know we can learn more in a long form conversation. So I want to pose, just volley a quick question to everyone as we're talking about this intersection of life, balance, and things have been wild this last couple of years. Everyone knows it. Everyone's gone through it. What has, been something that has supported you? I know, Dane, you mentioned you've been through, relationship challenges. Richard, supporting others with caregiving, and Scott, just being that leader, and Lindsay, of course, with your coaching. I see an intersection, and I'm getting to the question. I know it's long. I see an intersection of there being a need for complete change of how we look at supporting each other. So the question that I'm asking is, where do you feel that people may need some more support in, that they're really not asking for that support in that area? Just based on your experience from coaching or even through LifeGuides, where are you seeing people need more support, but they're just not asking for it?
My thoughts go every which way, like every minute, but and I think I spoke to you all about this in a session that we were having. I think that we need to give each other permission and encourage each other to be their authentic self, and that they are enough. Can we always learn more? Can we do it better? Of course we can. But all of us, each one of us individually, brings something that is so valuable to relationships in the family unit that needs to be, and to take Scott's comments, we need to feed that. We need to feed each other. Just one of my thoughts.
I was going to throw out that, oh, sorry, Richard, did you want to?
No, go for it. Go for it.
I was going to throw out a word that a lot of times is uncomfortable for folks, but I think it's something that all of us need and very few of us ask for, and that's love. And especially in the work environment, it's really uncomfortable for people to ask some sort of loving question or to provide a loving environment, because it's not something we're comfortable with, especially here in Western society, right? And so helping folks understand that love can look at like a whole bunch of different things. And if I'm being a steward, I'm caring for you. If I'm caring for you, there's love behind that. And so I think all of us need to be able to know that there are folks that love us for who we are and are concerned for us and want us to be successful. So I think for me, that's a big part of it.
Thank you.
Well, and I come from the other side of your coin, so I maybe should have gone first, because what I've noticed, there's a lot of fear out there. And we're coming out of this wave of fear into a riptide of fear. It is unrelenting right now. And and so for me, again, it's going, it's accepting love, giving empathy, just for me is personally, it's trying to walk every day without losing my humanity, without losing my compassion. That is my daily thought. As the external world rains down with terror and fear upon me, and my internal world offers all that, I'm still wanting to maintain my humanity, maintain my ability to still feel and receive. And I think this torrent of fear that is out there has a way of numbing us. We live in this fight or flight. And at a certain point, you experience so much fear that you shut down. And it's really asking for love is the hand reaching out. It's not necessarily intimate love. It's not emotional love. It is love of I see you. You are a human being in need. It's
Well
that
said.
basic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Have
was
to take
gonna
a
say,
moment.
kind of going along with that is like just how to strengthen our relationships. I think a lot of them were affected in the last few years, whether it was, you know, people you lost touch with or didn't get to see or talk to as often as you would like because of all the circumstances going on, or maybe you had different views of what was going on, or just kind of, you know, it was a tough time for relationships any kind. So I think just kind of working on those and how to strengthen it. People are obviously trying to work on themselves and doing self-care and all of that, but kind of looking outside yourself and figuring out how you can make your relationships the best they could possibly be too.
I'm going to be real selfish for a moment. Say, I'm thankful I asked that question. I didn't see, you know, the both sides of the coin. And we're seeing in the Q&A, for example, one of the anonymous attendees, I just want to read this out, says, yes, maintain our humanity to give and receive compassion despite our fear of being able to maintain authenticity, as Dane mentioned, without judgment. So anonymous attendee like perfectly said something that I didn't know I needed to hear until I heard it. You know, that it is important for us to, this streamlines and talks about exactly what we're doing. We're talking about balance. I want to continue on this path of, you know, talking about what people aren't asking for. And I wanted to share, I'm noticing that people aren't asking for help, you know, as much help in the sense that, let's say they don't understand, you know, there's sometimes a sense of pride that comes with, I know it, I'm a leader, I shouldn't have to ask questions to anyone to find out. I can, you know, find it out myself. And I think asking for help is something that's not happening as much. I mean, we're starting to see it happening more as the stigma is coming down off of mental health and, you know, just connecting with others. But I'd like to see more people take that charge of just saying, hey, I don't know everything. And I'll be the first to say it just personally. I definitely don't know everything. And I'm always seeking to learn more. And I want to read one more comment from the Q&A. Emma has been live in the chat, and I've appreciated that she said exactly, Scott, you know, working from home, it's like we're on the same wavelength. You know, it's that's something that we don't acknowledge as much too, is how much energy plays a part in how we connect with each other. So yeah, we're coming down to the last bit. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. We're gonna have a fun, quick activity towards the end of our session today. But I want to ask a quick question to Richard about, you know, this is something that we're working on internally. So I know that you'll be as honest as possible. But what's been vital for you to find allies? And that could be allies in love, allies in, you know, overcoming challenges, allies in quelling or squashing fear. What's been successful, you know, for you in finding those allies?
You know, it's morphed, given that we've become a more electronically based society. So you have to learn to read head and shoulders, not full body language, in getting allies. Part of it immediately for me is, and we've discussed the seen versus woke. Can this person see another? Do they see outside themselves? I'm not looking for you to understand. I'm needing you to see. And so allyship for me immediately now starts with that. Are you able to see beyond your world and recognize that another person's world is just as valid, just as full, and only feeds your world? We don't, you know, getting people to understand that the energy that is life is fed by other lives. So the more we align with others, the bigger our life is, the more powerful our lives are. So the more I meet people like yourselves, the more powerful I am. So I'm finding that for me, that is the key now for allyship. Looking, and again, it's redefining selfishness. I selfishly feed off your energy to build up mine. and simultaneously allow you to take mine to build yours.
Wow. You're talking about a symbiotic relationship, like where we feed and nurture each other
Sure.
and learn from each other and grow just by interacting, which
Hmm.
we're social beings. People probably heard that all the time, but just want to reiterate for all of the people who are introverts masquerading as extroverts, we are social people and it is important to connect with others. And
Well, and I
that-
think Lindsay also touched upon it. It's
I was about to say
accountability.
that, yeah.
Right.
We have to be accountable for each other, be there for each other. Actually, Lindsay, you know, with being there for each other, I know as a coach, there's an aspect of checking in with people and kind of seeing how they're doing and seeing how they're progressing. What's one of the challenges that you've seen just in your practice, as well as being a coach? What's one of the challenges you've seen in people maybe blocking them from making that connection?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of all the things, like I was saying, people are just busy now, they're just being pulled in different directions, and it's like in with, you know, your family and friends. So I think what I was saying earlier about kind of relationships and strengthening those, it's like really making a concerted effort to check in with people, see how they're doing. That was probably something maybe at the beginning of the pandemic people were starting to do, and then maybe, you know, as things progressed, people might have gotten away from that. So I think it's just kind of, you know, having your priorities straight, making sure you're kind of thinking who and what is important to you, and being able to check in and just share your own experiences too, or maybe reach out to someone and say, you know, I've been struggling or I need help. Like you were saying, people are maybe not asking for help. But yeah, I think being able to make sure you know what's going on with people and sharing your story as well as hearing theirs is important.
Yeah, that it's important. That filters into what Scott was talking about, you know, as far as being there, being that mentor, facilitating spaces for people to connect. And that's a good point about just when you think about anxiety and stress. And I know, Scott, that's one of the topics that you cover too, just supporting people with anxiety and stress. And it takes time. I mean, wouldn't you agree to do it? You know, Scott, I don't know if sometimes people want a quick answer or a quick fix, but yeah, what do you think about the time it takes to really work through stress and anxiety and manage it overall?
You're absolutely right, David. It takes time, and and unfortunately, you know, we're a instant gratification kind of society, right? And so,
Microwave.
yeah, exactly. It can be different, and it's funny as you were talking, it just reminded me. I actually stopped seeing a client who wanted help with stress and anxiety, but wasn't willing to take the time to do it. Right? They wanted it fixed. You know, give me a pill and I can take it and then I'm all good. I don't want to have to do anything else. And you know, if the commitment's not there, then it's a waste of everybody's time. But that's the way our society is, and we have to understand that anything good takes time. I don't care what it is. It takes time. And so you got to be able to step back and take a few breaths and relax and understand that it will come. And if you're thinking about it from an abundance perspective, then everything that you need to be as successful as you want to be is here for you. But you have to slow down and take the time to look and see what's there. Otherwise, you're just going to run right by it. And you're adding to your stress and you're adding to that anxiety that you have. So it's that slowing down that maybe is the first step to getting a hold or getting a handle on the stress or the anxiety that you might have.
Right. So it does take time. And I like that you mentioned that we have to be aware of how long it takes and be patient with that. And Dane, a quick, you know, kind of comment on what you were bringing earlier with the 3 C's around relationships. Like relationships take time to build. And I wanted to ask if you can maybe expound a little bit more on one of the C's, which is commit, because it does take a commitment, Scott, like you're saying, to work on anxiety and manage it. It takes commitment on both sides. So Dane, can you explain just a little bit more about what you see as far as commitment goes for building healthy relationships?
So it has occurred to me that we hear all the time, this is a 50-50 relationship, but I would like to challenge that. I think that we are responsible for at least 50%, meaning that we need to overreach. We need to go for more. So when I think about a commitment, I absolutely have got to be a good communicator, a good listener. And if I'm a good communicator and a listener, hopefully I'm able to compromise because I'm hearing what they're saying. And to bring in Scott's love, I love them. They're my family. If they're not my work family or personal family, they're in my work world. And I want nothing but the best for them as well. So, you value each other and what each other brings to the table. You acknowledge that we're all unique, we're individuals. In the relationship, someday somebody's going to pull a little harder than the other person. But that's a well-balanced, I like to think of it as a matched team, that pulls a wagon. You want a well-matched team, but you realize that sometimes somebody carries a little bit heavier load than the other. So it's a very fluid dynamic. I think it's really important that we share stories and family history.
Okay.
So much, probably in the tech world or online, that's what I think is missing, because you could just sit there and Google and find out anything. But I want to know the story. What's my story, Grandma? Something like that. That's how you really form bonds also in a family. And then again, in our frantic, frazzled world, we have to make sure that the time we do make, let's make it quality time. How many of you have gone out to dinner and observed at the table, everybody, including mom and dad, are on their phone?
Oh yeah,
You
that
know,
happens all the time.
so how about quality time? How about time out on the tech? Let's go to the pumpkin patch. So those are, I think I answered your question. But-
Absolutely. Yeah, you
So-
talked about commitment and how to
And-
do it, how to structure it.
and it's not easy. Commitment is not easy. It's hard work. And it's hard work. You just buy into that contract and it's binding.
Mm.
So
I like that you mentioned contract with that commit, because we go into contracts with each other when we, like social contracts, so to speak. We socially accept parts of contracts or parts of interactions, even though it goes unsaid. So that's a good add. I want to leave us as we break down. I want to give each of you a moment just to talk about the topics that you cover, and that, where they can find you. Unless there's anything else anyone wants to add, we're going to do a quick fun exercise. All right, everyone. I know everyone has had a challenging week. If you're into the planets being awkward, I heard someone say Mercury is in retrograde. Not sure scientifically how much that has to do with anything, but there may be some slight correlation, not necessarily causation there, but things have been weird. So what have you been happy for this last week? And I'll go first. I was extremely happy to see a coworker who was, just dealing with some challenges. Another coworker literally pick up and take care of their duties. When I saw that loving compassion that they saw for their fellow compatriot, their fellow teammate, to actually go take care of their duties for them. And it wasn't all right, I do this for you, I expect you to do it next time. It was a simple, you needed help in this moment and I'm here to help you. And it brought a smile to my face and made me happy. So that's something that made me happy this week. And I wanted to open it up to everyone else just to provide something that really made you smile this week?
I'll share a smile. So I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she is been struggling with school. It's a new school because we recently moved, and she came home on Monday because they had tests on Friday, this past Friday. And she came home and was just jumping up and down and so excited because all 3 of the big tests, the reading and the spelling and the math, of which she had been struggling on each one, she got 100% on each of those 3 tests. And so she was just so happy. And of course, then I'm very happy, right? So that was my happiness so far for this week.
I'll take it to the selfish.
All right, let's go, Richard.
Well, given that I caregive and, there's distress otherwise in my life, I'm really grateful for like the flower behind me that I found on a walk. And that every day I'm able to capture a bloom. And that's what I seek every morning. And I'm happy that almost every day for the last couple of months, I've been able to find one. And I found today the first autumnal colored leaf that actually made me smile and didn't make me sad that wool is coming out of the closet very soon.
Time to change the wardrobe. Well, thanks for sharing that part of your story with us. I appreciate that.
I'm also thankful for the nice fall weather for sure. It's getting a little autumnal here in Boston. But my happy moment of the week, I think, was spending time with my 1-year-old nephew. He always brings kind of a lot of joy to everyone in the family because he's just so adorable, and kind of watching him learn new things and grow and develop. Even if you don't see him for a few weeks, he seems to change so much in that short time because of how young he is. So that's always fun.
All right, Dane, we want to definitely hear your side too.
Well, I'm going to be selfish, Richard, and I'm going to talk about 2 smiles for my week. I'm going to take the first one to family conflict. I mentioned my challenges, but this week, my sister and I were able to have a very productive meeting and come to consensus as to how to move forward with my mother, who has got dementia, and specifically that we have made the commitment to keep her at home and give her the best quality time and the best of us that we can. And then I'm going to piggyback off Lindsay. Being a grandma is the best, and being a retired grandma is even better. So my first grandchild did live with me for a while, but I was working full time. Currently, I get to watch my 18-month-old granddaughter explore and investigate and discover her world. And it's just so humbling and so gratifying. And I just can't help but close with thinking, wow, I want to go back somehow, find some sort of compromise that I can have that kind of joy and innocence in the world when you as you do when you watch little ones.
Yeah.
That's my world.
Thanks for sharing. And I hope any of the attendees or even people watching on the archive can find some level of connection there too. So I encourage you, encourage everyone, if you are looking for support, these 4 wonderful guides are here to support you. As you can hear, they have a robust experience. If you want to let them know about a few of the topics that you love to cover and where to find you, feel free to put it in the chat or let them know directly. And we're about to close. I'm super thankful for each and every one of you for being here today and spending time. I invite everyone to, come off mute, and we're going to give a farewell to the people who've lasted all the way, and to the people who are, watching in the future. This may be like next month when they actually watch the recording. I want to give everyone a time to say goodbye and farewell.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks everyone for joining. Great talking.
Thank you for the
Seeing
opportunity.
you all. Hey, I made it.
You did it.
Good.
Kudos.
Good
We made
job.
it through our first one, Dane. Yep.
I know, and I am so jazzed. I am so excited. I'm gonna have to go work out or something and work off
Yeah.
all this nervous energy, so.
It's all that positive energy. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Have a
Have a
great
wonderful day.
Thank you again.